when they would sing or pray. You'll see a lot of them putting these on their head. I'm not real good at that. I also, when I got really hot, it ended up like this. So, and then sometimes I would just kind of get rid of it altogether. The shoes I bought on this trip. This was one of my few purchases. A couple of the young women took me to the open market, and I have a couple pictures of that. And they insisted that I had to have some Indian shoes. So I bought shoes and I bought the earrings. And these little clips here, I bought one for each of my granddaughters. Most of the things on the table were gifts to us from the people that we went to minister to. And they were very gracious in wanting to give back to us from, you know, what they were able to give. And so they're just very, as you can see, they're really pretty. These especially, when we would be greeted with these wraps, and at graduation we gave one to each of the graduates as well, so they're very significant. Okay, so let's start with the slides. And I'm going to try and go as fast as I can because we've got a lot of ground to cover. These first two slides represent the religious culture of India. India is a fascinating place, and when we landed in Mumbai and walked into the airport, these were some of the things we saw in the airport. The primary religion of India is Hindu, and Ganesh is the elephant god. And we were there actually for the Ganesh festival, which is a 10-day festival where they will pray to Ganesh for knowledge to have success, because he is the god of knowledge. And so all over, wherever we went, we would see altars to Ganesh, we would see people congregating around these idols, and then of course in the airport there was these billboards. The other is a Hindu god, I'm not even sure who that is. The next slide. This is a roadside billboard on the way up into the Himalayas. I just thought it was an interesting representation of some of the religious influences in India.
The hotel where we stayed in Goa had these statues, and I thought it was Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. That's supposed to be a joke. But anyway, really, it was Portuguese settlers there in Goa, which is a seaport, a resort town, and Goa is a highly highly Catholic because of the Portuguese.
The next picture was also in the airport. These, we actually took this picture for you, Rachel, because these are yoga poses. And you can't see them very well. I think if we were to zoom in on them, you could see, I'm sure that you can recognize some of those poses. Rachel is a yoga instructor. Okay, the next slide begins our view of the traffic in India. And I took a lot of traffic pictures because I was in the traffic a lot. And I had a wonderful driver, his name was David, and David and his wife Renu were my guide for the second week, and they drove me many, many places. But what you can see through some of these pictures, just go ahead and flip through these, Judy. You see bicycles riding along with the people. You see cows everywhere. They told us that the cows were on the roads more because of it was the monsoon season, and so it was a lot of rain, a lot of mud, and a lot of wetness in the fields, and so the cows would come up on the roads to be able to get out of the mud and to find food. And so we would see them eating in the garbage and just everywhere. We also saw motorbikes, bicycles, rickshaws, and that was a tuk-tuk, which is their taxi. This is an example of some of the chaos that you see in the traffic because there are no rules, there's no laws. And so even though you're supposed to drive on the left side of the road, A motorbike might be zooming through traffic in and out from the left to the right. Sometimes you'll see 4 motorbikes coming at you at the same time. And usually it's the biggest vehicle is the winner.
Now, one of my drivers said that in America, you drive on the right side of the road, and in England, you drive on the left side of the road, and in India, you drive right down the middle of the road. And that was very true, and it reminded me much of the Thailand traffic that we experienced.
The other thing that they do is they honk the horn all the time, and we were really confused by that. What was the reason for the horn honking? And my driver finally explained to me that if you honk the horn and then you hit somebody, it's their fault. If you don't honk the horn, then it's your fault. But that doesn't go to the cows because they don't pay attention to the horns. And you do not hit a cow because the cows all belong to people. And if you hit a cow, then the owner will come after you and sue you.
And I remember the saying in the 80s, you might remember from Wendy's, where's the beef? Well, I can tell you the beef is all over the roads there in India. There were cows everywhere.
We also saw chickens and goats and pigs and just about every kind of animal because they don't believe in fences. And so the animals just run freely and you just have to dodge them. This is a representation that we saw all along the roads of an Indian convenience store. And the amazing thing is there would be 20 of these right next to each other, just right up along the road with nowhere to walk between the road and the store. And I think what happens is when the traffic is really heavy, people will lean out the window and buy things. So wherever you stop, that's where you can buy things at the convenience store. This is a picture of The Voice in India. And it's interesting how we saw some representations of American TV in Indian culture.
This is a railroad station. We were up in the Himalaya Mountains when this was taken. And so the railroads would take people up into the Himalayas on very narrow tracks.
The next 2 pictures are Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola was everywhere. And I basically took those pictures because my sister-in-law decorated her kitchen in Coca-Cola memorabilia. And I posted them on Facebook for Sandy, saying that even in India, they decorate with Coca-Cola.
Now, I don't drink Coke, but I did there because the water was not safe to drink. So at some meals, the only thing they offered you was a regular Coke, and I wanted to drink something. So.
The other American influence in food we saw was Domino's Pizza, McDonald's, and KFC. And we ate it at those places because we knew that the food was edible.
And the food was so bad at the hotel, the second hotel that we stayed at, that we ate at KFC 3 times in 1 week, which was kind of incredible that we would do that, but at least we were able to eat.
The interesting thing about McDonald's is they did not serve beef. Can you imagine McDonald's without hamburgers?
You could only get a chicken sandwich or a veggie sandwich. That was McDonald's. But the French fries were the same.
The French fries were the same, and you could not buy a soda by itself. You had to buy a sandwich if you bought a soda. Lots of food rules.
The next several slides are our hotel at Goa. It was on the beach, the Arabic Sea on the southwest coast of India. But we only put our feet in the water 1 time. We were busy all the time. But it was a beautiful place to stay. That's the resort at Goa where we stayed. As soon as we arrived in Goa, we went to the church service. These are the children at the church service, and every Sunday after their Sunday school is over, the children get up and share a Bible verse or a song. And they were so cute singing and reciting their verses. And I think the next slide is going to show us Pastor Jason Job, and his interpreter, because there were so many Americans there. Abraham was the interpreter so that we would understand what Jason was saying. On Monday, we began the Institute, and this is big, I think, yes. We had 60-something students at this Institute, and we had the opportunity to teach, and my teaching was about preaching. And one of the things that I focused on was to try to be exciting in your preaching. And I think I succeeded in some respects because we had some great comments from the guys. And the interpreter at the second location said to me, all of the teachers have given us information, but Pastor Don, you've given us inspiration. And that's why I went in. I wanted to fire them up and share that with the folks in India. So we were there. You can keep on with the slides now. This is Mrs. Marie. The first time I spoke at the Goa Institute, I shared my time with Marie, so I'll let her talk about that for a moment.
Yes, we arrived there on Monday, and Don said, I'm teaching today, tomorrow you're going to be going to the ladies' meeting, so I will give you half of my time. And so I spoke on my workshop on forgiveness and anger, and of course with the interpreter. After the session, I was sitting in the back, and I realized I don't know where the restroom is. And so Pastor Jason came back, and Don asked if there's a way for a woman to use the restroom in this place, and because the men went outside to the woods. When I realized that that was the only option, I told Pastor Jason, I think I need to go back to the hotel, and he agreed with me. He said he'd never been asked that question about what's a woman to do at these institutes, because they hadn't had any women there. So he had a pastor who wanted to speak with us, and especially with me, about counseling some of his parishioners. So that pastor and his wife came and picked Don and I up and took us back to the hotel, and we spent about 3 hours with them, just talking about the ministry, and they were a really interesting couple.
These are the students doing some stretching exercises to be awake, and they were so intent, and they took notes, and they were so serious about their faith. They were anywhere from 14 years of age to one man, the guy in the white there, 72 years old, was a pastor of a church, and he just wanted to come and learn more about Jesus. Okay, yes. This is our interpreter. He was 24 years old that day. His name is Pushkill, and they decided to offer him up a birthday cake. Now, it wasn't a very big cake, and I didn't think we were going to get to eat too much of it. They took the cake and they smeared it all over Pushkill, but he loved the fact that they were putting the cake. The next slide will come. I brought the guitar out. Well, they had a guitar there. So one of the songs, because I started teaching early in the morning and then I would teach sometimes late in the afternoon, I decided to teach the young men a song, Alive, Alert, Awake, Enthusiastic. My daughter remembers that song. Alive, Alert, Awake, Enthusiastic. Alive, Alert, Awake, Enthusiastic. Alive, Alert, Awake, Awake, Alert, Alive. Alive, Alert, Awake, Enthusiastic. And they had a ball singing that song, so we had a good time with that. This is Dr. Ron. You remember Dr. Ron Garrett as he's teaching. And these are the other teachers that were with us, and we're all rooting each other on when the other person is teaching. So that's more teaching there at... Then there's a picture in a moment of the entire class after it was complete, I think. So if you go on, these are the guys in the class at Goa. And there were 60, that's the bathroom, by the way, just keep going. That's the guys eating at Goa. They had great food. It rained a lot, it was the rainy season. So this is the entire class at Goa. Go ahead.
Then next we begin the women's meetings. And this was the road to the church where we had a 2-day women's conference. The first day when Pastor Jason drove me up to this church, he tried to drive down that road, and a man came out of one of these buildings and started screaming at us and told us that that was not a road for cars. And so he had to back up and try to figure out a place where he could park. It's such an interesting thing. Parking is just wherever you can find it. This is a picture of the greeter at the church. This dog lives at that church, and he stands on the porch and he greets people when they come in. This is the church where we had the meetings, the Hindustani Covenant Church, and the pastor and his wife were there as to help me, Pastor Ignatius and his wife Sagrita. That's the altar of the church. And then we had some boisterous singing. And there's several pictures of the singing. That's that's Pastor Jason's wife. And I'm sorry to say, I had some videos of the singing, but the videos, we have the pictures, but the sound didn't work. And then after school, the children were dropped off, and they joined in, and there was one of the boys just came up and got on the drums and joined in for one of the Now this is an interesting picture because they left their shoes at the door. And there were two reasons for that. One is because outside was so dirty, and they didn't want to bring the dirt inside. But the second reason was they believed that that scripture that says to take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground, and they believed that the sanctuary was holy ground. And so everyone took their shoes off. So I stood from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, basically teaching in bare feet. This is an intense prayer time with the women. There were many mothers with babies, small children, toddlers, and they just took care of them. It was amazing how it worked. And then there was teaching time. As I said, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. with breaks for lunch and tea. I had an interpreter, and her name was Stella, and this was the first time that she had ever interpreted. And sometimes I would say something, and she'd look at me, and I could tell she did not know what that word was, and so then I'd have to explain it to her. So the interesting time with the thing with interpreting, too, is I would say 3 words, and it would take them 3 sentences to interpret those 3 words. And so we're not sure if they're literally saying the same thing that we were, or if they just have a lot of words for our few words. This begins the testimonies. The second day, at the end of the day, the pastor invited testimonies. And let's just stay with each one of these, Judy, because I want to talk about each one. The lady before this one in the green and orange, she came up and she said, I spoke the first day on marriage, some of the things that Don shared this morning, and also on raising godly children and how to have good communication in your marriage. And so one of the things she said she learned was to respect her husband. This woman said that she needed to allow God's joy to flow through her to her husband and her children. And so she was so excited to begin doing that. This lady said that she couldn't wait for her husband to come home after the first day's meeting because she wanted to kiss him. And he was so surprised when she did and asked her why she was so happy and dancing around the house. This lady said that she decided to give 10 positive comments for every negative comment to her children because she had been very negative towards them. And she said that her son asked her why she was so happy, and she told him that God is making her happy. These 4 women all asked for prayer. The woman in purple is a student, and she was asking for prayer on God's direction in her life. The older woman in orange said that she was in a lot of pain. The woman in red is the one who said she went home joyous and was dancing around the house. And then the other woman, the one on the far right, is a pastor's wife who was burned in a gas burner explosion. And she had scars all over her body. And she was very sad and said that she's in a lot of pain all the time. Later I learned that one of the pastors told me that she had been a very beautiful woman before the explosion. And that since the explosion, she just has, it's like there was just this sadness about her for the losses from that accident. This woman I spent a good bit of time with because she said that her husband's a Muslim and that he would not allow her to come to church and did not want her to be at those meetings. And when she went home the first day, he was very angry. And she came back the next day and was in tears, telling me that she didn't know how she was going to handle living with her husband. I encouraged her to find a Christian woman who she could meet with one-on-one to get fellowship, since she wasn't allowed to come to church. And there were several women like that who asked for prayer because they had alcoholic husbands or Hindu husbands or Muslim husbands or husbands that were believers but not following God. the men upstairs were cooking our lunch each day. And they served it to us. And then, at the end of the day, when we were having the testimony time, I looked back at the back door at one point, and all the men were gathered listening to the testimonies. And I could just see from their faces that they were thrilled to see how their women were being encouraged and built up in their faith.
This is at Pastor Jason Jobs' house. These boys are all orphan boys that he's taken into his home. And from what I understand, he's taken over 30 orphans over the years into his home. Now, he has his own children, but these boys got up and sang for us. They're doing a song with motions right there. Let's look at the next slide. This is Pastor Jason and his wife and his 2 children. His little girl, who's 13 years old, sang in the praise team in their church. And they're just a very special family. They sang for us. And we went to their home and had a wonderful meal with Jason and Elena. This is at the last day of our classes in Goa, where they presented us with a gift. They actually gave us these coffee mugs, and they look very plain and simple, but they're magic mugs. When you put something hot in them, you see the emblem for the institute and the name of the Rhema Institute. So this is one of the pastors who gave me the mug. This is the whole class from Goa when they graduate. They are in a 9-week institute, but they finished so few things over there. For them to finish this 9-week institute, they were so excited. And so that's their graduation. There may be some more. This is Pastor Jason at the graduation. And these are the distinguished faculty at the graduation. That's their guys. There you go. Keep going. There you go. They're singing. This is the band at the graduation. They love to sing. This couple sang a special. That's actually the children of Jason John. And some of the other graduates. And Marie was assisting Dr. Ron by giving out books at this graduation as he gave out their certificates. And every one of the men that went through this class received not only a diploma from Rhema, but also a certificate of pastoral studies from William Carey University, which is where Dr. Ron went to school. At the end of the graduation, we laid our hands on the graduates and prayed for them, because they're going out to start churches, they're going out to be evangelists, they're going out to share the gospel, and that's why we went. So we're praying for the graduates.
This is, the next day we traveled to Delhi. And this is a picture of the neighborhood that the slum pastor lives in. I was standing outside his front door, and this is across the street from his house. The next picture is down the alley, and if you can look up at the top of the picture, you see a wad of electrical, I'm not sure what it is. I would be afraid to have that in my neighborhood. It was such a mess. But you see that kind of electricity all over the place in India. He took us to get our money changed up this rickety place that I thought we weren't going to get out of alive. And I know when we were standing there, I was standing against the wall, and as I leaned back, I leaned against a live electrical wire, and I felt the shock on my back, and I thought, better not lean against that wall. But that's just the way, and sometimes you would see construction workers, and they would have an electric wire to these huge drills and things. It was like something you wouldn't even run your hairdryer by. But that's
This is a picture of Pastor Monsi in the back and some of the slum children. Now, the way that the children can get out of the slum is by going to school. These children that have uniforms on, somebody has paid $150 for the year for them to be able to go to school. If they go to school, here's more. This is a slum family, and these 2 children are in school, and that's Pastor Monsi. And he loves these families in the slums. But we're going to take you to the slums. This is where they live.
That is actually, if you look back in the middle top of the picture, that is a home. That black space, it's like a little enclave, and if you walk back there, you see that they had swept out the dirt, and that's where they slept, in those little open boxes.
We had 3 different meetings in the slums, and Monty, who's the pastor there, would gather up the people, and they would listen to everything he said. In this particular meeting, there was one middle-aged man who was sitting there listening, and his cell phone rang. And Monty, while another one of our guys was talking, Monty went and took the cell phone from him, turned it off, and put it in his pocket. And this guy just sat there, you know, okay, I'm not supposed to answer my cell phone. And the gospel was presented to those in the slums. Now, this is the most interesting. This is where I preached, in a little room about the size of the room in the back. And that is a snake charmer's. This is a snake. Can we play the video now? Won't play. There is a snake in there. I was sitting I was sitting about this far from where that snake was, and the room was wall-to-wall people. There was no way I could get out. And here comes the snake, and he was up. Here we go. There you go. No sound, but that's okay. Yeah. It was a real snake. I was real scared.
This room wasn't as big as our bathroom. And we're all sitting with about 15 people around this little basket. And he opens it up and this snake comes out. It was the craziest thing.
Anyway, we got out alive. Right.
But then Don actually was the one who taught at that place.
I was preached the gospel then.
And the next day we traveled again, got back on the airplanes, and that of itself was an adventure, because to get to India, we were given a certain amount of weight that our luggage could be. Traveling in India, they only allowed about half that weight. And it varied. You couldn't get them to tell you exactly what they required until we got to the counter, and they would tell us how much we were over and how much it was going to cost us. It wasn't the same every time. And we would have to be pulling things out, and we packed as much as we could in our carry-on. We learned to hide our carry-on so they wouldn't weigh it. I mean, it was like, I felt like I'd been through a wrestling match every time we got through security. But we got there, and this is what we saw. This is the hotel in Siliguri. The nice thing about this hotel, that was the ceiling of that hotel. If you look up several stories, it was really a beautifully constructed hotel, and it was air conditioned. And that was a treat. These are just some of the pretty things in the hotel. And then we go to the next REMA.
And these were the students greeting us as we came in. And they're all applauding as we come in and we walk through and go up to the classroom. It was amazing. And this is the class. I think that that's the picture of, I don't know if that's me teaching or not. But they also prepared their own meals there, and they fed us, of course. And these guys were great cooks. Of course, I saw more rice than I've seen in a long time. This is the second class. This was the class in Siliguri. And I think there were 38 students in Siliguri.
This is the beginning of my adventure into the Himalayas. On Monday, David and his wife Renu, and the pastor's wife, Margaret, and 2 other women and a toddler, all traveled 2 hours up the mountains to the women's conference that we did. And this was along the road. Again, we were stopped in traffic, and this man was standing there, and I said, "That looks like coconut." And Margaret said, "It is coconut." And she waved him over, and she bought some of those coconut slices out of his tray. And I thought, I took a picture because I thought, coconut cream pie, Indian style. So I did not eat the coconut. I was afraid to eat anything that wasn't cooked because of the bacteria there. Let's see, we've got a couple of pictures of the scenery driving up the mountain. You can see the mountains in the distance. And then we came to the monkeys. We actually drove through monkey country, And all along the sides of the road, the monkeys were in the trees, and they were sitting on the barriers. They were everywhere. And I just took a couple of pictures of the monkeys. The other interesting thing was the elephants. This was wild elephant country, and this is a picture of an elephant lookout stand in the middle of a rice paddy. And I didn't see any elephants, but they said that the wild elephants live in this whole area, and all up the road were signs saying, "Wild elephant crossing, beware." The driver told me that if you run into an elephant on the road, you have to be careful because they will charge your car and they can destroy it. So you just have to wait until they decide what they do, and sometimes that takes hours. But on the rice paddies, if the elephants come into the rice paddies at certain times, they trample the rice and it's ruined. So they have men sit in those towers, and when they see an elephant come out of the woods, they make certain noises that scare the elephants away. So all along the rice paddies, you see those towers.
You'll notice the sign here, "One Day Revival for Women." This is the first revival that Marie has preached. She's going to tell you more about that.
Next picture. This was what I saw when I first walked into the meeting hall. As we were driving up to the church, the driver was driving along this road into this town, and we're trying to find the church. And I noticed all these women walking along the sides of the road with children, and I counted more than 100 women in all these beautiful saris, and I thought, there must be some kind of festival or celebration in town. These women were all coming to this meeting. We had over 300 women and about 50 children squished into this meeting hall. They all sat on the floor, no air conditioning, no screens in the windows. The electricity went on and off several times an hour. And so when the electricity was on, the fans would run. When it was off, you would sweat. Cute, cute children. And the singing. This place really was boisterous in their singing. And I think, is that the video? There's the video.
She's got music on her phone. She's able to synchronize with you.
Yeah, we couldn't get the sound to work on the.
They have a wonderful time soon.
Okay, you get the picture. To me, it was just overwhelming to stand on that stage and watch that sea of women and children just celebrating the Lord. And there was no PowerPoint, there was just a guy with a guitar, and they just exploded in emotion. It was really cool. And then I started speaking, and there's several pictures. You can just run through these, Judy. My interpreter here is named Angel, and Angel is an incredible young woman that I've got to know very well. She had been married for just a year, and she was from a wealthy family by Indian standards. Her father is he's a soldier or something, but anyways, he wanted her to marry a rich man. And she said no. I called to the ministry, and she met her husband, and her father told her, if you marry him, then you will get no more money from me. And she is committed to serving God, and she actually went through the Rima Institute. She's the first woman to do so. This is the pastor's wife, and who organized the second retreat, and her son, and then more singing.
That's a video. Do you want that one?
Let's just pass on that one. I don't have the sound for that one. There's Angel interpreting. I think she was leading the music there. This is Renew. The interesting thing about Renew, her husband told me, that was my driver, David, and her husband told me that they were introduced to each other through Christian friends because they didn't want their parents to arrange the marriage. And they did not meet until they were engaged. So, and they had been married for just a year. These were some of the women. And the lady in the yellow in the last picture was a businesswoman who had driven over the mountains more than 2 hours to get to these meetings. And there I am. I finally figured out what I had to do after standing on my feet barefoot all day. My legs, my ankles, and my feet swelled up and just throbbing pain. And so if I put my feet over my head for about an hour, then things kind of went back to normal. The next day, Angel and Renew decided to take me to the market, and that was quite an experience. I stepped out onto the street into about a half foot of mud, and they took me into these little alleys that I didn't know if we were going to get out alive, but we did.
Now, this is the beginning of graduation day, and that is Pastor Hira Singh, and he's showing us the head of the pig because they cook the pig for graduation. While the Hindus don't eat any meat, the Christians do, and so they did a great job of cooking the pig. This is the Rima graduation. This was actually in Goa. There was an announcement for the graduation. And this is the crowd in Siliguri that graduated. They were very excited, and they loved to take pictures, many, many pictures. That's Marie with two of the women that took her shopping. The one on the left is Angel. This was one of the interpreters, the one who said, I inspired the men. Very nice guy. And this is Angel and her husband, Raj. Now, you may get to meet them because Raj's sister is getting married this next year in New York City. And so they're going to make a trip to America. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that trip to America includes Sedalia, Missouri. Now, if you hold on this slide, if you have ever seen Francis Chan, this was one of our drivers, and we all called him Francis Chan. He's a great guy. I think there's a close-up of him. I'm not sure. Great guy. They love music, and so here they were playing some more music at the graduation. Angel.
Angel and Raj sang a special, and he introduced it by saying that this was the song that they sang on their honeymoon. And it was a song giving praise and glory to God for all His blessings. I have it, the recording of it. I just want to play you a little bit of it.
These again are the different guys who taught. The fellow standing next to Dr. Ron is a pastor in Oklahoma City, and Taylor, the guy next to him, is his son-in-law, who's his youth minister. So he brought him along to teach. I thought that was pretty good. I'm not sure what the preacher's getting into there. The men also sang a beautiful song, but we can't play that for you.
This was probably my favorite song, and whenever they would sing it, the tune got in my head because it was really catchy. And I asked the ladies what did it mean, because they were not singing in English. And they said that basically they were saying, why are you so sad when you know you're going to heaven? Count your blessings and be happy in God.
And these guys, they danced when they sang.
Boy, they really got into it with the hand gestures and just having a good time.
This is my time to talk to them, and one of the things that I emphasized to them was sharing the gospel clearly. So as I did that, I used the hand gesture illustration about how God took our sin upon Christ, and He died to pay for our sins. And it was really neat because I got the whole class to do that earlier in the week, and these guys were out there doing it at the same time I was. This guy right here that Marie's putting the stole over was a math teacher with a master's degree, and he's going to continue to teach, but he wants to plant a church. I thought that was so exciting. And this is the first female graduate, Angel, that Marie congratulated there. Once again, we prayed for the graduates. Now we're beginning our journey.
Yes, the next day we packed up to actually return to America, but that day we had some time, and so we drove up again into the Himalayas to have tea on top of the world.
And we were in a town that they call kind of like the top of the world. That's a church there, a Catholic church, I believe, and then we had tea together. And a few minutes ago you saw tea plantations. We saw a lot of people picking tea. It's just a beautiful country. What an opportunity. You'll see some of the houses on the side of the hill, the side of the mountains. People lived all up in that area.
This was, again, a 2-hour drive. And it was a 2-hour drive around roads that didn't look like 2 cars should be able to fit on them. But we would turn the corner and be faced with a big truck that we had to get by. And so they'd have to maneuver to get around each other. And I thought many times that we were not going to make it up that mountain, but that's the way they do it.
It was a scary ride, but we made it. So, and then we made it back down. This is the last flight of it.
And I took a picture. This was actually across the street from where we had tea. Hurry, burry, spoils the curry is the slogan, and on the other side it says, steady wins the race. And it's interesting because India is a lot of contradictions, because wherever you go, there's people, there's traffic, there's craziness, and people just pushing and shoving and trying to get wherever they need to go. But then on the other hand, you would just slow down to a stop and just have to wait and be patient and take your time to get where you needed to go. And sometimes whenever they tell me they were coming to pick me up, they would say, well, we'll be there between 9:30 and 10, or we'll be there between 8 and 9, because they never knew how much traffic they were going to face and how long it was going to take them to get anywhere. And that's part of why in that culture, time is not as relevant, because everything is very variable on how long it's going to take.
But we, once again, thank you so much for allowing us to go. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Marie or myself? Yes.
What was your biggest takeaway from the trip? Like, what did you learn most while you were there?
I don't know if I could boil it down to one thing, but whenever God sends me someplace out of my comfort zone like this, and I always ask Him why, first of all, and then what does He want me to accomplish? And it's interesting. I mean, I knew I was going there to teach, but I really believe there were certain people that God wanted me to minister to in India. And one of the main ones was Angel. We have decided to continue our relationship by talking over the internet. It's going to be interesting because of the time difference, but she just has such a hunger to follow God, and she was just she was like a sponge, just soaking things up. And so I'm so excited to have that opportunity to build into her lives. And the other thing was to see that even with all our differences and all the cultural craziness that we experienced, people are people. And these women that I minister to have the same needs that we do. They have the same heart that they wanted to learn about God. They wanted to know how to have good marriages. They wanted to be able to have good, healthy children. They wanted more for their children. and a better life for their children. And, you know, people are people around the world.
I think the biggest takeaway for me was that Dr. Ron's philosophy, which is a scriptural philosophy of teaching men there the right culture, the right color, the right language, is the way to get the gospel out. In 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 2, it says, "The things which you have heard from me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also." That's what I went for, to teach those faithful men who will teach others also. And every year at Rhema, some of the guys that went this year will send guys next year to come and learn the same thing. So it's really exciting to me to be a part of that process. And I'm so thankful that God gave us the opportunity, and that you gave us the opportunity to go, and you sent us. And I'm so thankful for that. And we hope to be able to make a difference around the world somewhere else too. Maybe tonight, as we close the service, we're going to sing a hymn. Maybe tonight God's calling you to a mission. You know, our mission can be across the street or across the world, around the world. The mission is to tell others about Jesus, and to get others to tell others about Jesus. That's why we do what we do. So I'm not sure what we're singing. That's your job, Todd. Todd, Mr. Todd. So let's stand as we sing Just As I Am, 307. Stand together.